What's up, Raider Nation? Welcome to another True Raider podcast. Now, I want to talk with you guys today about an article that came out from heavy.com. And I know, I've seen a lot of articles on heavy.com that I really just think they're reaching. It's a lot of smoke, but some of them have been pretty accurate from what I have seen, right? And so I want to dive into this because I thought it was really interesting. Now, let me share the screen real quick. All right, there it is. All right, so in this, what we're looking at is it says Godfather trade proposal has Raiders deal with Commanders to add QB. So in this article, it says the Washington Commanders appear locked into the idea of drafting a quarterback with the number 2 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. The Las Vegas Raiders also have a big need at quarterback and appear to have the most interest in LSU's Jaden Daniels. The issue facing the Raiders is that Commanders are likely to take Daniels if they keep their pick. If Las Vegas truly wants Daniels bad enough, they're going to have to pay a very steep price to convince Washington to move down. Vincent Bozignor of the Las Vegas Review Journal pitched his idea of a Godfather offer the Raiders could offer the Commanders. That means Antonio Pierce's strong desire to draft Daniels could lead Telesco to make the Commanders an offer for the number 2 overall pick they can't refuse, Bosgnor wrote on in an April 2nd column, right? And this is April 2nd, and it's just coming out today. So one scenario would involve the Raiders sending Washington the 13th pick, this year's first, their second round pick from 2024, their 2025 and 26 first round picks, and the 2026 third round pick. And it says that the Commanders are in a total rebuild under new ownership, a new head coach, and a new general manager. The team hasn't won a playoff game since 2005 and has massive needs all over the roster. Getting 5 picks from the Raiders could certainly help jumpstart a rebuild. They'd still be able to add a different quarterback this year later in the draft. Now, down here, and this is all saying the stuff I've been saying, right? It's talking about too much pressure on Jane Daniels if we move that many picks. Let's see. It says it could place an immense amount of pressure on Daniels to justify the price the Raiders paid to get him, Bozignor wrote. It would also put Pierce under scrutiny to make it work. On the other hand, no one will care about what the Raiders surrendered for Daniels if he turns into the franchise quarterback the team has lacked for decades. Now, if the Raiders traded all those assets to get Daniels, and if he wasn't any good, he'd go down as one of the biggest busts ever. That said, the team has unique insight into Daniels as head coach Antonio Pierce recruited the quarterback in college. If he's worth this kind of a trade, Pierce would know. See, and this really, honestly, it just backs up the whole thing that I've been talking about with Jaden Daniels and moving up and it being worth the trade. Now, if that is truly the price tag to go and get Jaden Daniels, that is 3 first-round picks, this year's second, and a 2026 third-round pick. Now, I got to tell you guys, the way that I personally stand on this is if that's the price, go and pay it. That's where I truly stand on this. Now, I don't really like the idea of losing the second-round pick from this year. Because there's a lot of good guys that are going to be going in the second round, but it puts us in a position where we have the second round pick next year and the second round pick the following year. And we saw a report just a couple weeks ago. Mitchell Renz was talking about that the Raiders tried to move up with the Miami Dolphins to get their first round pick for this year. And what we were going to move is our second, third, and fourth round picks from this year for their first this year, right? And if we're doing that, it was more than likely to try to package to move up and get Jaden Daniels. So if we're in a position where we're not giving up all that draft capital from this year, kind of spreading it out over the course of 3 years, I really like the idea of that better. There are some pros and cons to moving all that draft capital from this season, right? If we moved all the picks from this year, didn't really mortgage too much of the future, I could see why that would be a good idea for the Raiders, right? But I could also see how holding on to most of our picks from this year and next year and even 2026, just kind of moving on from those 3 first rounders, the second round from this year and the third, I would say go for it. And like the article was saying, if Jaden Daniels really turns out to be that franchise quarterback that we really, those of us that are banging the desk for Jaden Daniels, if he turns out to be that quarterback that we believe he can be, like it said in the article, we are not going to miss those picks at all, right? Now, if he does flop and it doesn't turn out the way that we really hope that it would, it's right. That article is completely right that he would turn out to be, one of the biggest busts ever, right? And that's a lot of draft capital, 5 picks to move on from quarterback that ends up, either getting injured or doesn't really translate to the NFL. And it can put us in a position where, we spent a lot and got nothing. Now, if you look at the Trey Lance trade with the 49ers, they moved on from almost as much draft cap, not quite as much, right? He wasn't quite as, we all know that, this year, the cost to move up in those first 3 picks is a lot higher than previous years. But the 49ers moved on from a bunch of picks to go get Trey Lance. He ended up turning out to be a bust, right? And he got injured, and they ended up moving on from him for a 3rd round pick. And he went to the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason they moved on from him is because they had Brock Purdy, right? And Brock Purdy, last guy of the draft, turns out to be a great quarterback. Nobody saw it coming. And I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, we don't have our Brock Purdy, this and that." Well, the thing is that we essentially kind of do, right? Now, I wouldn't say that Aiden O'Connell is as good as Brock Purdy, right? But he's not really far off, and we haven't really seen everything that we can get out of Aiden O'Connell. And honestly, I wouldn't mind moving forward with Aiden O'Connell because I believe that he will play better than he did overall last year. I think he'd be more in line to the last several games where he played really good. And I think that him having a full training camp and things like that, it could put him in a position where, if we move forward with the idea of him being QB1, that he will have, better practice, better training, better preparation, and be able to fulfill that role in a better way than he did last year, right? But so if we were to move all these picks, though, and move up, get Jane Daniels, and he turns out not to be that guy, we still have Aiden O'Connell, we still have Garner Minshew on our roster. So we have a huge fallback plan. Now, personally, I don't think that Jaden Daniels is going to be a bust. I could see Jaden Daniels going to almost any situation in NFL and playing really good. I don't see him being like a Bryce Young where he went over there to the Panthers and just kind of had a terrible season. I don't see that being what would happen to Daniels. I think that he would perform better even in that situation. But if he falls, into a situation like being with the Las Vegas Raiders, where we have a lot of offensive weapons, most of our offensive line is really good. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, we need a right tackle and a right guard." We have Thayer Mumford, right? And I think Thayer Mumford is going to fill one of those roles, and it's going to be about finding who we're going to put next to him, whether it be someone at guard and put Thayer Mumford at right tackle, or if we pick up on a right tackle and we move Mumford into the right guard position, I think he'll perform great there. So, really, I think it's worth the gamble. I really, really do. And I think Antonio Pierce does as well. Now, what we're really going to have to wait and see on is one, if Tom Telesco also believes that that gamble is going to be worth it. And two, if the Commanders are even willing to move on. Because there's been a lot of articles, a lot of reports out there talking about how the Commanders are really high on Jaden Daniels. But the thing is of course they're saying that. The Commanders are going to say that they're high on Jaden Daniels because they want us. Because, we slipped up early, right? AP slipped up, let it be known that Jaden Daniels was his guy. And I think whether he said that or not, because Jaden Daniels, you know, gave a shout out to AP and Marvin Lewis in his Heisman Trophy speech, it gave it away pretty early on that he wants to go to the Raiders, and that, you know, also the Raiders give it away that they want in Daniels, right? And so the Commanders, of course, they're going to be hyping this up. They're going to say, yeah, we want Jane Daniels. So you're really going to have to pay if you want to get up there and get your guy. Because, see, I don't think that the Commanders are sold on him. I honestly don't. There's been a lot of other reports that have come out that they actually really like JJ McCarthy, things like that. And like the article was talking about how the Commanders are rebuilding, right? And they still have a lot of holes on their roster. And they won free agency. I really think that they won free agency. Maybe the Bears. I don't know. Bears are doing pretty well in that department as well, right? But the Commanders really did a lot of good building. They pulled in a lot of pieces, and they're going to be quite the different team this season. But are they a quarterback away? And they might be thinking that, well, if they don't pick up a quarterback now, then they're going to be in position to get all those picks, and they could package those picks, right? Because they'll get our first round at 13, which there's going to be some great players available at 13, especially because of the run on quarterbacks. They're also going to get pick number 44, which is our second round pick from this year. And there's going to be some great pick 44. And they're going to be able to build, you know, their roster this season. And they got a ton of picks this year. I think they already have 2 seconds and 2 thirds, I think it was. Somebody on one of my posts pointed this out to me, and I was able to like look through and find out that they actually have a lot more draft capital than I really thought. And then if they do all that building this year, right, and they pick up you know, our first rounder, and then they have like 3 second round picks and 2 third round picks, that's going to be insane for them to do that kind of building. And then moving into next year, they'll have their first round pick, our first round pick, and they'll have 2 first round picks for 2026, which they could trade that capital in order to move up if they want to get a quarterback, right? Whereas for us, this is the year that I believe that we really need to move up to quarterback if we're going to do it, because we're in a position where we're at 13, right? And it's hard to move from 13 up into the top 3. But next year, we're going to be drafting a lot later than pick number 13. I have no doubts about that. I honestly believe that no matter what quarterback we start with, whether it's Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, we're going to be hitting the playoffs. I see that coming, man. I really honestly believe that. And so if we're drafting, you know, later in the first round, it's going to be harder next year, because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, let's just get a quarterback next year. We're not going to be able to move up next year, right? And so we're going to hope that somebody falls later in the first or pick up a second round quarterback we can move forward with, right? And I really don't think that that's the best plan. I really think that right now we're in a position where if we move on from 3 first rounders, this year's second, and 2026 third round pick, move up, get Jaden Daniels, if he turns out to be our guy, it's going to all be worth it, and we're not going to miss those picks. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. You know, is this going to be, would you pay that price for it? You know, if it's a yes, let me know if it's a yes. If it's a no, let me know it's a no. Please remember, hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like. I'll see you guys on the next one.